Hello, welcome to Recapping with Delora
and Ashley.
Please follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Recapping Podcast.
Also, comment, rate, and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. We're on all the things.
We would love to hear your ratings of the movies and shows we review.
Email us your audio file to recappingpodcast@gmail.com and we will play it during the show.
Or DM us on Instagram and we will post and read it on air.
Thank you guys so much for listening.
Thank you. Hello, Ashley.
Delora, how are you, darling?
Amazing. You know what I realized? That part of the reason why we sing what we're saying is largely influenced by the great Queen Mother Oprah.
You think that's where it comes from?
I think so. Because after watching this interview and she did her moments, I'm like, oh, that's from Oprah.
See, I thought it was just Black culture, right? We just got that soul in our voice. You just cannot help
That's
but
just
to
what it is.
Sing your words every now and again. You know, it's the spirit.
Ashley, this is our 21st episode.
Yes, I've been singing her 21 song for the last 10 minutes.
I love it. No Adele, huh? But she didn't have anything
Adele. I love
specifically 21. It was just the entire album, right?
And her is living her best life right now. So
she is. She's one of my fave.
Mine too, girl.
So
go ahead.
Go ahead. Are we gonna do our shot?
Absolutely. I was gonna say, in honor. Cheers, darling.
Cheers.
And cheers to all you lovely listeners out there if you want to take a shot. Woo-wee. I'm going to do a little bit of a chaser. Guys, I'm drinking Crown Apple, as usual. Delora, what are you sipping on?
Terramana from my boo, The Rock.
Guys, Delora really got me on that Terramana. I have a bottle in my refrigerator currently.
Tequila.
Yes, it is a tequila. Crown is still my go-to at the moment. But I don't know. I'm getting a little... every now and again, you need a change. So if anybody has some good liquor recommendations, go ahead and drop that in the DMs or a comment. Love to hear it. Thank you so much.
Let us know. And so now it's time for our hot topics.
Yeah.
Ooh, let's see how this tequila is going to be treating me by the end of this podcast. Okay. Ashley, the world has been talking about this hot topic for the last 3 days, nonstop, A block on every news outlet.
It's the juice. Now.
We're talking about Oprah's interview with Meghan and Harry. So, I was glued on Sunday. I made sure everything was together. My cable connection, my antenna, what have you.
Not together. You check the cable connection.
Girl. Because what I was not going to do was miss this interview. In this interview, and I also want to say this, Gail knows how to hype up her girlfriend, as always. And she was just like, Oprah told me this is the best interview she's ever done. This is like a week out, right? And when I tell you there were bombs, okay? Tea was spilled. The tea was so hot, Ashley.
It was scalding.
It is
because some mofos got scalded for sure.
Ashley, so let's get into this. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the interview in sections. So the themes that I found in this interview were protection, racism, their baby, which is a happy side note, and the fallout. And we'll get into the fallout of the interview after we discuss this interview. Okay, protection. During this interview, Meghan is pretty much telling us that she did not feel protected by the royal family. She essentially said that she gave up everything. She mentioned she gave up her passport, her keys, obviously her life before. She was an independent woman, a self-made woman, right?
Yes.
And in hopes that she would be protected, by the royal family, and they did nothing, Ashley. Not a dang on thing. She even slid this in. She's like, they're willing to lie for some family members than tell the truth for me. And one of those moments, she talked about how they reversed the story. They reversed the story about Meghan making Kate cry.
Yes.
Because in actuality, it was Kate that made Meghan cry. And that's racism in itself, because they weaponize a white woman's tears, Ashley.
As Sunny Hostin so beautifully said on The View
and I
this
picked that
past
up
week.
Very quickly. And my girl Lovey, she wrote a whole article a couple of years ago, and she reprinted she reposted it on social media, like, weaponizing white women's tears. That's a thing.
Yes.
Okay, let's keep going. Protection. They didn't protect this baby. She said that they weren't going to give him a title, and they weren't going to give him protection. And they dropped Harry's protection when they moved to Canada.
Wild.
All, they weren't even... the biggest thing for me, Ashley, was the fact that they actually didn't want to leave. They were essentially pushed out. And this was a prime signal. That and them cutting off the money. Cutting off the purse, Ashley. What are your thoughts on this before we go further in on this this interview?
I was gonna say, I know I'm just throwing in words here and there, but this was so much. It's so much. I had no idea that if they were gonna be this candid. I'll be completely honest that I was shocked. I was making that Oprah face every 5 minutes.
Yes.
Because they lived in their truth. I will say that. The idea that they were gonna treat Archie differently apparently than they treated William and Kate's children, the idea that they would strip the prince who was born a prince of his security life, and then also not realize the extreme circumstances around his family, because I mean the amount of intrigue and pressure and everything that went into their union and their family, and all the criticism and all the, they were on every tabloid, they were everywhere. Yes. You're telling me you're not going to give these people security? It
was almost like they were pushing him out, and they were sicking the media on them, because when he said they moved to Canada, when their location was found out, where they were staying at a friend's house, that's when he realized, okay, I have no security and I don't have any money.
Yeah.
They had to escape to California to stay with freaking Tyler Perry, Ashley.
Through Tyler Perry. When I tell you, that was like, are you kidding me? Tyler Perry is protecting the royals. When your own family won't protect you, and gave them security.
And paid for their security, Ashley.
That's a hell of a friend right there. And Diana having to be the MVP as well. It was unfathomable, the degree to which the information was coming out and spilling. And I appreciated it because, listen, thank you for taking back the full curtain. I felt that it was a continuation of a narrative that Diana was trying to tell.
And the crown, girl. And the crown.
But listen, this is reality, right? People can dismiss the crown as being fiction. Yes. When you have Prince Harry himself coming out and saying, listen, they're trapped. My brother and my father are trapped. I was unhappy. I was trapped. I didn't know. I was a part of this cycle. I didn't even realize it. Meghan saved my life by helping me to see past this and get out of this. I mean, that is mind-blowing for someone of that stature to come out and say. Mind-blowing.
Absolutely. All right, Ashley. So the two nuclear bombs that they dropped, the first...
Why do I have bombs over Baghdad going in my head? Forgive me, guys.
Girl. Meghan admitted, Ashley, that the scrutiny was so much, and her being lonely because of the scrutiny, she wasn't allowed to leave. She felt alone and isolated and could not find help. She considered taking her own life.
Chilling. I mean, that was devastating. I think that we could have never understood the full extent to which she possibly could have been in pain. Like, I think it had reached a point, especially when they refer back to that interview where Meghan tells the reporter, like, no one has ever thought to ask me if I'm okay. I knew then that something was clearly wrong, but to the extent that she was thinking about suicide, especially while she was pregnant with her child.
She said, he was like, oh no, you can't go. She's like, I can't be left alone.
I mean, that's some scary stuff. And then to ask for help, reach out for help, and to be told no, be told this is not a good look, is horrifying. And to put yourself in Meghan's shoes, right? She was stripped of everything she's ever known. Her life,
gave up everything for
her country,
this man and his family.
Yeah. And just looking into the veil, as you said, like on the crown and things like that, I can only imagine what that reality has to be like. Remember, Diana supposedly threw herself down the steps when she was pregnant as a cry out for help. So the realities of this situation are so much darker and sadder than especially I think most people can imagine.
Support. There was no princess book.
Absolutely no
and
support.
That's another thing. It's almost like, did they want her to fail? Like, she came in.
One could think.
She had no direction. I remember seeing freaking articles all the time saying she's breaking royal protocol. She's breaking royal protocol. If she didn't have any support or anyone showing her the ropes, of course she might break royal protocol, but this
is not the Princess Diaries.
It's not.
Nobody picked her up. Nobody showed her how to do things. Nobody gave her a makeover. She did not have, I kept seeing the memes about, where is Joe? I wish Joe was around to protect them. There is no Joe. This is not a film.
This was her real life. And Ashley, this interview was so explosive. I know they have more. And they have receipts.
Delora, I feel like they have so much tea that could have been spilled, and they chose, because you could tell during the conversation how much they paused and thought about what they were going to say before they said it.
Yes.
You can tell. And the fact that they still protected the queen, in my mind, in terms of not specifically
obvious.
Yeah, they were not specifically ever trying to throw her under the bus. They would say the family, but then they would say, oh, but the queen has been lovely. My relationship with the queen
highly the entire time.
And they made sure also to say that it wasn't her or Philip who said
because Philip was number one on my list.
That said something about Archie's race. Yeah.
We'll get there. Okay. So cry for help and wasn't there. And I will add this, having been pregnant, emotionally, it is one of the most vulnerable times in your life, to the point where, I mean, things will trigger you and you don't even know why. It's almost like an outer body experience. So
your hormones are on 20, right?
On 1,000. Okay. And to have so much negative, growing up, we would always say stick and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. That's actually entirely incorrect. Okay. Words hurt. I mean,
very much so.
The Bible says life and death is in the power of the tongue. Okay. So I can only imagine the weight of the world being on this woman's shoulders.
And that was with her not reading anything herself.
And this is her getting the responses from her family and friends, and even
imagine her mama. Imagine her mama, a Black woman sitting back. Her mama got a list. She got a hit list.
Yes, she does. But her thinking it would probably be easier if I wasn't here. I'll get there. Okay, I got to get to this other nuclear bomb. In talking about this during her pregnancy, she talked about how there were conversations that this child will not have any title and zero security, and concerns over the color of this child. My mouth was on the floor, Ashley.
Absolutely. You can see Meghan was like, oh shit, I can't believe what I just said. Because she had to readjust.
She did.
She got a little hot, like, oh God. Yeah, that was
the thing about the internet saying, I know Oprah being a woman of the South is not surprised of racism. Of course she's not. The thing that I love about Oprah, she said, it wasn't that I was surprised that they had this conversation. She was like, I was surprised that she told me this.
Exactly. Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like, I had no idea the tea was going to be this much.
It's so hot.
I had no idea. Like, again, I appreciate the candor. I appreciate the honesty.
Yes.
Because they didn't have to be.
They did not have to be. And of course, I'm going to put this in also. We're talking about the British royal family. Mm-hmm. We're talking about how Harry's grandmother and grandfather are actually cousins. So the idea that they will feel some kind of way, these are facts, Ashley.
No, I believe you. I'm sorry, guys, you can't see me, but I just made a total face
because
I did not know that. I don't follow them as closely as you do.
Girl,
so I didn't know that.
Blue Bloods?
I mean, I knew that there was inbreeding, for lack of a better word, to keep the royal bloodline pure. That's historically factual for sure. But I just didn't know that this was the case for the Queen and Philip. I don't know where I've been. I don't know where I've been, but thank you for that.
But of course, these people who colonized the world, of course, they're going to and introduced slavery and so many other atrocities. Of course, they're going to feel some kind of way about a quarter Black child.
It, again, is not, especially to
Black
people.
I can't.
I'm sorry, guys. I feel like I'm probably not being as eloquent on the mic today as I need to be because it's so crazy to me. This interview was so crazy to me. So I'm at a little bit of a loss for words, but I will say this for sure. I was definitely shocked about all the information that was given in that interview. But as I told you before this happened, if anyone could get out the tea, it is Oprah freaking Winfrey. I knew that if anybody interviewed them and they would be able to feel comfortable enough to really open up, it was going to be Oprah. So first of all, kudos to her for an excellent interview. She was me. She was you. She was all of us. So she was asking those follow-ups like, hold on. So I asked you about your brother and you didn't really answer me.
Like, one of my favorite,
what's your relationship with William?
Memes is like, who said that shit?
Yes.
Okay, I respect you. All right, Harry, who said that?
No, listen. What's really good? And then you also sent me another one like, I don't fuck with you, but we blood, right? Like, we're space. Our relationship is space. Cause I don't fuck with you right now. You showed your whole ass. Your whole ass.
And so like you're speaking to, so the other revelations, Prince Charles has stopped taking Harry's calls, which is WTF, exclamation point. I'm
trying to be super respectful, but girl, Charles, you ain't shit.
Period.
You ain't shit.
Point.
You are that man's father. He has no mother. His mother died tragically.
He has one parent.
And you stop taking your son's calls?
And as you also mentioned, there's space between the brothers. And so the thing that I wanted to wrap this all up before we get into the actual fallout of the interview is I felt like the royal family allowed Meghan Markle to be the media's punching bag to hide the scandal of Prince Andrew and his relationship with Epstein. And quiet as it's kept, there's also an awful rumor that Prince William was having an affair with Kate, one of Kate's friends.
I just saw that news in the aftermath of everything that happened. I wasn't aware of that entanglement, but I guess it would be a like father, like son, if that's the case.
Oh my God.
You know, let the entanglements live on, okay? But Delora, also another bombshell was the relationship that the Crown has with the press, because I was not fully aware of that relationship and about the, again, entanglements.
That's why I also feel like they sick them on her. You
or
know what
if
I mean?
Nothing else, they let it go on. That's the thing. Like it's almost that, you know, you may not have antagonized it, but you didn't stop it,
and that says it's almost like the silence. It's like if you see something racist or wrong, silence is complicity.
Exactly, you're complicit in what happened to Meghan for sure. And again, the additional layers that happen where I'm reaching out for help, Harry's reaching out for help, we didn't blindside anybody, we talked about this for years, nobody's really there for us. I can't wait till you get to the statement from the palace, because that was some bullshit,
girl. And like you said, the way that the media framed them leaving was Megxit, when in actuality, all they wanted to do was step down, and it wasn't even unprecedented what they were asking for. And essentially, based off of the royal family's behavior, it seemed like they just wanted them out, frankly.
Crazy.
So Ashley, the fallout. So based off my timeline, it felt like 2 days, but I think in actuality, it was about a day before the palace had anything to say. Mind you, the palace was out here.
No, I think you're right, Laura. I think it may have been 48 hours. I think
was
you're
it
right.
a full? I
think it was, the interview aired Sunday night. So maybe not a full 48, but it was 2 days in the sense of we had one day that passed, and it wasn't until the next day that we had a statement.
Exactly. And here's this weak-ass statement. Okay. The following statement is issued by Buckingham Palace on behalf of Her Majesty the Queen. The whole family is saddened to learn the full extent of how challenging the last few years have been for Harry and Meghan. The issues raised, particularly that of race, are concerning. While some recollections may vary,
Lord,
they are taken very seriously and will be addressed by the family privately.
Mm-hmm.
Harry, Meghan, and Archie will always be much loved family members.
That meme where Viola Davis is sitting down, she gets up and grabs her purse.
Yes.
That's my response to that bullshit. That's my response to that.
This was so weak. It was so weak, Ashley.
You might as well have not said anything, because what you said was, that was unfortunate. I guess we'll talk about it behind closed doors, which means you're not going to do a goddamn thing.
Not a thing. Not a thing. And again, they were out here puffing their chests talking about there's an HR investigation about Meghan bullying that's 3 years old. No
but
one,
again, don't want to investigate nothing about Andrew and his picture with a young lady who said, listen, I was one of Epstein's sex slaves and I had sex with Prince Andrew. Period. Full stop.
And again, the media, the headline news, the most incendiary interview in 85 years or something the palace has ever seen. Again, Andrew's interview from 2019 was awkward. Was
you mean where this man said he doesn't sweat? Excuse me?
It was so bad, Ashley. It was so bad. And even the interviewer knew interview for him, for his sake. And somehow Meghan and Harry speaking their truth was the most incendiary thing that's ever happened to Buckingham Palace. Again, they're using her as a scapegoat. And I'm proud of Meghan and Harry, especially Meghan, for saying, hey, I'm taking the narrative back. I was silenced.
Absolutely.
And here's our truth. And again, based off this week's statement by the palace, you know Meghan and Harry have receipts. Mm-hmm. And they will, again, I thought Harry was going to say that shit. Like, who asked about it? I knew he was going to say it, but
that's what I give them kudos for too, is like, to think about possibly, because especially when he talked about his father, you could tell that him and his father have really, really, really fallen out, right? Mm-hmm. And so, but it's like that family loyalty. At the end of the day, I'm not going to put my family all the way out here, because I will always love them. They'll always be my family. So I respected that in Harry, and that at the end of the day, you know, things may have happened, things may have transpired, but that's still my family. I have respect for that. Yeah. But at the same time, I think they said enough that was damaging enough to give us the realities, like I said, of the situation. And the article you sent me earlier about, you know, it seeming like Barbados is finally going to really, you know, declare their full independence. Yeah. And if other you know, nations that are minority led follow suit, you know, I think change is coming. And I think that it's probably been well overdue. And I want to say this, I want to put a caveat on this. For those who are listening, because I know we have some UK listeners for our podcast, we are two Black women, American born and bred, who are giving our perspective. This is not intended to be an overreach as if we know better or we have a perspective that is of that nation. You know, this is us speaking from our perspective. So
and
I don't want to be offensive.
Of Meghan.
Absolutely. She is an American. So, but I just say that because I want to make sure that any UK listeners are not like, you two Americans, you know, what right do you have to speak on these issues? We're just giving you guys our perspective. Yes. So the last thing I was just going to say was I think that Princess Diana will forever be the MVP, period.
GOAT. Forever. I mean, period. So the last thing I'm going to say, fallout with Piers Morgan. Piers Morgan, host of Good Morning Britain. You can probably imagine all the people in America, George Stephanopoulos, all right? Good Morning America, his equivalent. He obviously hates Meghan. He obviously just does not like her. He doesn't have the time a day for her. And
has a personal grudge.
I'm glad that the video clip has made its way on the internet about how they shared a dinner together, or not even dinner. It wasn't a date. I'm not going to call it that, but they spent some time together and she left and ghosted him. And he has been salty ever since. And it's been obvious ever since she's married him. So he's been on record saying that he didn't trust anything that she had to say. It was the Oscar performance of her life, and that he questioned her mental health. Well, Ashley, there were 41,000 complaints made to, Britain's that station about his comments about Meghan Markle, specifically when it came to her mental health. It's also been said that she personally wrote a letter saying how this is offensive for people who've had similar thoughts, and you need to check on it. So I always like to put in quotation that he quit, Ashley, because I feel like it might have been one of those mutual agreements. And now he's talking about he's willing to die for free speech. Ashley, what are your thoughts on this?
This is a hill he's willing to die on. Be blessed and keep it pushing. I don't follow Piers Morgan's career. I don't care if he never returns to television. From what I saw of the clips and things like that, he's one of those people who can dish it but can't take it. Because
girl,
sit on
that clip was delicious. When the weatherman was like, you obviously have a personal vendetta against her because of that one time over.
And she's never said anything about you. Like, you just come for her on the regular, and you want to sit here, and we have to sit here and listen to you day in and day out, but you can't listen to what I have to say. I mean, he
couldn't take 2 minutes, Ashley. So he expected this woman to be barraged for the last 4 years and not have any type of mental exhaustion of that type of hate.
He just seems like someone who, again, wants to be heard but has no capacity to listen, because he's formed his own opinion. He's even said now, days later, I stand by what I said. He has people like Sharon Osbourne coming out and supporting him in his wrongness.
That clip made my blood boil.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys out there have watched The Talk. We're doing this on a Wednesday, and the episode was cringeworthy, where they were addressing her, tweeting her support for Piers Morgan and his right to free speech. I'll say that, again, if he does not get another job, it won't make a difference to me one way or another.
Job, unfortunately.
I do not feel that people who get on television or on platforms just to antagonize or bash or be negative deserve my attention. So that's really all I have to say about Piers Morgan.
Well said. Well, it was one of the most delicious moments of the fallout for this Meghan and Harry interview. And on a happier note, I'm going to end Hot Topics with they're having a baby girl. I just think that's so sweet.
Diana's going to be in the name somewhere.
Absolutely. And the baby girl is due in the summer. So, Ashley,
congratulations.
Is there anything else about this interview that's noteworthy besides the memes?
Girl, I think that's really it. The memes, and then her attire. I mean, it was so intentional. Gorgeous. And it was intentional with certain messaging. So Meghan, I'm glad you feel like you've gotten your voice back. I'm glad that it seems like you and Harry are living your best lives, and I'll be rooting for you guys from the sidelines.
And I also want to point out, I love how Black women support our own. Beyonce has been on record supporting Meghan, Sabrina, Gabrielle Union. so many people. So
come through.
Live your life, safety, health, love, happiness.
All the things. Are we ready to move into our recap?
Are we going to Zamunda?
Girl, speaking of royalty, we're going back to Zamunda. Yes! Coming to America, number 2 this time. This is the sequel to the much beloved cult classic Coming to America from 1988. The film dropped March 5th on Amazon Prime. It is PG-13. The original was rated R. Amazon reported that the film drew the most opening weekend viewers of any movie during the pandemic. So essentially top weekend of any film in the past 12 months. No hard stats, but I guess we're supposed to take Amazon's word for it.
That's what Netflix does.
You know they do. A quick summary. The African monarch, Akeem, learns he has a long-lost son in the United States and must return to America to meet this unexpected heir and build a relationship with his son. The director of Hustle and Flow fame, Craig Brewer. Screenplay by the one and only Kenya Barris, as well as Barry Blaustein and David Sheffield, who actually have worked with Eddie for some years, going all the way back to Boomerang, the original Coming to America, and Nutty Professor. I have to mention this because the costumes were on point. Oscar-winning costume designer Ruth E. Carter brought out her tricks for this one because it was beautiful, beautiful. Yes. Let's get into the cast real quick. We have Eddie Murphy back as Prince Akeem, as well as Clarence, Saul, and Randy Watson. Arsenio Hall as Simi, Morris, Reverend Brown, and Baba. We have newcomer Jermaine Fowler as Lavelle Johnson. We have Leslie Jones as his mother, Mary Johnson. We have Tracy Morgan as his uncle, Uncle Reem. We have Kiki Lane as Keem's daughter, Mika.
Beautiful.
She was gorge. We have Sherry Headley back as Lisa, Princess Lisa, who becomes Queen Lisa. We have Wesley Snipes as General Izzy. We have James Earl Jones back as King Jaffa. We have John Amos back as Cleo McDowell. We have Tiana Taylor as Mopoto or Bopoto. We have, yeah, girl, these names. We have Vanessa Bell Calloway. I'm glad you're doing
it this week, not me.
We have Vanessa Bell Calloway back as Imani Izzy. We have Paul Bates as Oha back. We have Nomzamo Batha as Marimbe. We have Bella Murphy, Eddie Murphy's daughter, as Oma. We have Akili Love as Tanashi. We have Garcelle back as Rosebearer Priestess. We have Rotimi as Edie Easy. And I just want to give a shout out to special appearances by comedians such as Louis Anderson returning, Trevor Noah in a very funny role and cameo.
You want to give all the cameos away?
No. I'm not giving them all. I'm just giving you some of the comedians. Michael Blackson and Lou Nail. So those are just some of the comics who appear throughout. So ratings and reviews for this film. Yeah. Rotten Tomatoes, 51% critic score, 46% audience score. 82% though of Google users like this film. Delora, I've given others opinions. Now it's time for ours. Give me your grade for Coming to America.
All right, Ashley. This movie was fine. It was fine. It was fine. You know, I felt like it was a Kids Bop version of Coming to America, the first one.
A Kids Bop.
So I gave this film a B- because the story wasn't awful, but there were some issues. And I genuinely laughed. There have been multiple movies I've watched that are quote unquote comedies that I don't laugh at all. I got some good laughs. That's why it's a B-. How about you, Ashley?
Well, that is wonderful. I gave it a C. And I have to be honest, my C is an improvement off of the first time I watched it. The second time I watched it is what brought it up. Because I have to say, I'm definitely one of those people who feels you should let sleeping dogs lie. This was not a sequel that I felt needed to ever be made.
Mm-hmm.
So I was curious, but was not overly enthusiastic about this sequel. But for the culture, obviously we needed to talk about it, right?
I might have an unpopular opinion, Ashley.
I'm sure some people are with you. I think my brother.
No, what I was going to say was I technically thought this was funnier than the first.
Oh, yeah, you definitely have an unpopular opinion.
And I say that because I feel like we appreciate the first for all the cultural references, but I rewatched it before I watched the second one, and I didn't really laugh that much.
But see, you're looking at it through the lens of today versus Coming to America is fucking hilarious. The original is hilarious. I still say lines from that movie.
It's still not my favorite. Like, I quote it. I love Sexual Chocolate. I love She's Your Queen to Be.
Yes.
Like I'm there. But rewatching it, I'm like, oh, well, did I laugh at all the jokes already? Like, I don't know.
Again, I think you're looking at through your lens of today because that movie is hilarious. I definitely still quote it to this day.
Same.
But for me, this second film, as I was mentioning, I had a couple moments of humor. Leslie Jones was really the standout for me in terms of moments that I probably laughed at more than anybody.
I think she's ever been for me. Honestly.
And then it just seemed like everybody involved was having such a good time, right? Like it seemed like they were having so much fun. So I appreciate it. And I also, Eddie Murphy has been on every show that I've watched over the past week or so talking about this. I'm loving the candle backdrop that he has. It puts me in the mood every time.
So funny.
But I just feel like, the intention behind it, the excitement for it, the idea that, this is a cult classic that he felt he could build upon. For all those reasons, when I watched it the second time, I watched it with kinder eyes. I watched it for what it was versus my expectations or trying to put onto it what I felt it should be. Mm-hmm. So that's why my grade for this film is a C.
But I will say this movie has mixed reviews, okay?
As we obviously just mentioned with Rotten Tomatoes, it is not going to be beloved in the way that the first film was. But I think for people who did love it, it's levity. It's an escape. It's a chance to go back to this world. Yeah. And see what these characters have been up to. Did it move forward the storyline? Really? No, but it was fun. Mm-hmm. First of all, Lisa lived for me. I was like, yo, Lisa, I'm glad you haven't lost that edge. Cause for a minute I thought she had, and I was like, Lisa, come through.
That's true.
True. I thought she had lost her edge for a minute, but let's get into the meat. Let me go ahead and give our spoiler alert as we move into the good of the film. So, Delora, this is 33 years since the original film, right? But we open going right on back to Zamunda.
Mm-hmm. Same opening.
Prince Akeem and Princess Lisa and everyone else are celebrating their 30th anniversary. Fun fact, this palace is actually owned by Rick Ross, who appears in the film. So kudos to you, sir. I love that they were bringing McDowell's to the motherland in this opening sequence. It was so funny because I wondered how much Lisa's family was going to be included in the sequel. So to see her dad is still around, he's come to Zamunda, stuff like that was nice for me. What'd you think about the opening?
The joke for me with the McDowell's is the fact that it's supposedly in the middle of the desert. I'm like, so where's the power lines for electricity and the plumbing?
You going water? Real technical. You going
like this must be the joke because this is so unrealistic.
Yeah, I just love that he's still talking about the difference between him and McDonald's all these years later. The McFlurby.
He's like 81 years old. Like
Cleo's hanging in there. Cleo is hanging in there. But yeah, I enjoyed the opening sequence. It was luscious.
And I missed her sister. I did miss her.
I had to look that up post film because I was like, where is Patrice? Mm-hmm. Like, I'm just so unsure of, I know at the end of the first film, it seemed like she was going to go off with Daryl. Yes. So maybe they're supposed to be off living their best life.
But they didn't even mention her.
They did at all. So that's why I was saying I wasn't sure how much Lisa's family was going to be included in the second film. So I'm glad at least we have Daddy who's still around, right? So we move on to the next Dorian crew, led by the one and only Wesley Snipes, aka General Izzy. I loved his intro by Michael Blackson, the most well-endowed man in Africa, the inspiration for Mufasa.
Hilarious.
So he is also, of note, the brother of Imani from the first film, who Akeem did not choose to marry, right? He decided at that point, that was when he was going to go to America and find his love, or as his father said, sow his royal oats. But General Izzy comes to the palace because he wants to unite the family. So he's talking about the poverty that his country is experiencing. So first we see him offering his son, Rotimi.
Honestly, this was the first time I cracked up. The way he did that pump, that had me dying. I loved it.
I think Wesley Snipes was a great, this was really a chance for him to showcase some of his more humorous
But I'm talking about Timmy.
Oh, you like Rotimi being funny.
When he came out of nowhere, then he was just like, hey, and they're like, pow. I'm like, oh my God, what are you doing?
Listen, I don't feel like Power gave him enough shirtless scenes because he looks very good.
And don't get me wrong, Wesley Snipes is out here stealing the scenes now,
He was hilarious. I remember leading up to this, how Eddie Murphy talked about, listen, Wesley can do everything. You guys just don't realize, he was really funny.
My favorite movie, one of my top favorite movies, the drag queen movie, To Wong Fu, Thanks for Everything, Julie Newmar. He was a drag queen. He was hilarious in that role.
Gotcha. Well, I have not seen that. So I guess I'll have to add that to my list
1995 legendary
in the future watches. But as I was mentioning, he's come to the kingdom. He's offering his son up first to Akeem's daughter. That's a no-go. Mika is not here for it. Seems like a threat, though, he's kind of giving them if the family is not united. It seems like he's kind of threatening war as the alternative. Yeah. I have to go back to plotting your death, essentially, if we don't get this figured out. Meanwhile, King Jafar is dying. Delora, his mother, Prince Akeem's mother, has already passed away by the time we get to this film, but his father's still hanging in there. But he mentions that the throne has to be passed to a male heir after Akeem passes away. I have in my notes the sexism against women rulers. That's what we're doing. Okay.
I know. It's the law, Ashley. It's
the freaking law. So at the same time, though, King Jafar informs Akeem he has his whole son. Unbeknownst to him, back in the day, of the first film era, he got high, and Simi picked up women from a bar, and Leslie Jones is the one who hopped on top. He didn't realize he had even had sex with her. He thought it was a wild boar.
Ashley, you do know this is date rape, right?
I mean, I will say that it definitely came across that this man was unaware that he was sexually.
He obviously didn't know. It took him 33 years to even try to remotely.
But
jog his memory.
The only reason why I don't want to go down the line of saying it's date rape is because I don't think that Leslie Jones' character intentionally raped him.
Was it malicious? No, but it just was that's part of my issue with this movie. I'm like, so this is not okay. And these are all men who wrote this. Where were the women consultation in this?
It's obviously unfortunate that he had sex with her and was unaware that he had procreated, right? But again, the reason why I don't want to say, sexual assault, whatever, because she didn't do this. She didn't do this against his will at all. She puffed. She puffed and passed to him, and he didn't know the full effects. He was like, oh, I smoked some of her medicinal herb, and then a wild boar came at me. So it did not fall down that line. But to your point, yes, the way that it's phrased or seen, he was not in his right mind to give consent.
It's just not okay. I'm putting that out there to our listeners.
I know we had this conversation with Bridgerton. I just think they put it in some level of a shade of gray. So I don't want to say Leslie Jones raped him, because I don't think that is what happened.
But that is the definition of date rape. When you drug someone and without full consent
But is it drugging if the person takes the drug? It's not like she didn't take the drug. He didn't take the drug. You know what I mean?
We're not having this conversation right now.
I'm just saying. Listeners, y'all be the judge, because I'm just saying it's like a puff pass situation. She didn't know the effects it was going to have. She didn't know that he wasn't aware of what was happening to him.
He wasn't able to do any of the things he needed to do to prevent this pregnancy. That's what I'm trying to say. He wasn't fully aware, that's what I'm saying.
And I understand what you're saying. What I'm saying is, I don't think that she intentionally took advantage, because I don't think she realized to what extent he had become inebriated. That's what I'm saying. I don't think it was he passed out and she still hopped on top and did her thing. That's what I mean. I don't think it was intentional on her part. That's all I'll say.
I'm just saying, it took them how many years to write this, and this is what they came up with.
Well, hey, I have nothing to say about the storyline. That's totally on them. I'm just giving my perception. Let's move on. So, as I mentioned, now he's realized he has a son. I love Baba, by the way, because he or she, I don't even know what gender this is supposed to be.
Shaman, it's a man.
Okay. He was
Arsenio
hilarious.
Hall.
Exactly. Played by the Arsenio Hall. Hilarious is like, I saw it in a vision. They drew up a picture. This is what your son looks like. Take this and go find your son. Like, oh, go take this sketch and go find my son in a whole nother country. Okay, we got you. It was also crazy how they kept calling Akeem weak and saying he'd be assassinated within a month of becoming king if he doesn't go find his son.
Oh, but the one thing I will mention, for them to, still be very much a patriarchal, forgive me for not saying that properly,
patriarchal society, they were able to identify that it was his shortcomings, quote unquote, of not being able to have an heir versus blaming it on the woman. So that seems like gross. The sperm designates
exactly
the gender, not the egg.
Exactly.
Yeah. They throw the king as he's dying a lavish funeral, Delora, complete with a cameo by Morgan Freeman, performances by In Vogue, Salt and Pepper, and Gladys Knight. What'd you think of this beautiful funeral?
First of all, this is the other part where I started laughing, because I was like, wait, is that Morgan Freeman? Like, two legendary voices in the same room. OMG, right? And then I started laughing when I realized, obviously, they had all the big people that were big in the 80s, right? So you have In Vogue and Salt and Pepper and Peppa, forgive me. And to hear their modified songs had me cracking up, talking about he's cool like Obama and looks good, like, and I'm just like, and then the Midnight Train, this is Zamunda. Oh my gosh. I was like, whoa. And then they were clowning Akeem at the end, talking about couldn't have a son or something, or I don't know. Hilarious.
They would not leave Akeem alone. And then he chooses to die, right? Or I should say he's like, listen, son, I'm going to die now. And he dies beautifully in his
ridiculous
casket.
This is where it was like over the top. First of all, he was like, I want to go to my funeral, and then
while I'm still alive, so I can fully enjoy everything that everyone has to say.
Okay, sure. I guess that's what you do, right?
For the king, absolutely. Back to Queens we go, though, Delora, because after the king's death, Akeem is like, listen, I'm going to take my daddy's advice. I'm going to go locate. They made a point of calling him his bastard son. I really hate that term.
Yes.
But they made a point to keep saying that. His son, once we get to cut to Queens, is going for an interview. And we meet him and his uncle, played by Tracy Morgan. And he's giving his white voice, essentially, in order to try to get this job.
Code switching.
This was a funny segment for a couple of reasons, or funny sequence for a couple of reasons. First of all, I love that they still incorporate Duke and Duke from Trading Places into this narrative.
Yeah.
Colin Jost plays this privileged, unaware white man who is the descendant of Duke and Duke, and gives some very racist undertones in terms of questions he was asking, his rhetoric. Yes. And was completely unaware. Colin Jost, obviously from SNL fame, if those listening are not aware. But I just thought it was such a funny, interesting sequence to kind of introduce us to this heir apparent. What did you think about this scene?
I thought it was a great scene. I loved when he was like, "Nuck if you buck," essentially, when he was like, oh, so you're gonna try to play into my life. Let's go into yours, okay? Like your parents paid how much money for you to go to a leverage rehab facility? He's like, you work quote unquote so hard for this position your father helped you get. You know, it's like,
and you went to rehab and your daddy took you. First of all, it was for opioids, and my mom took me. Oh, you told me, white man. But no, it was very entertaining for, again, I love the continued throwback of
I'm glad that you said that. I didn't even
movies.
catch that. That was a good Easter egg.
Yeah, it was definitely there, because I think they also did that at the very end of the first Coming to America, with they were like homeless, like Duke and Duke were homeless. Akeem and Simi end up rolling up on this son and see him working as a ticket scalper for a sports game, because they go first to the barbershop, go back to the barbershop to figure out where he might be, right? So we get reintroduced.
Those jokes.
We get reintroduced to some of the most beloved characters from the first film, right? Mm-hmm. After a little chat, though, because the son takes them to really be evaluated by his mother, Leslie Jones, say, "Listen, is this my daddy? You know, is this accurate?" Yes, it is. So on that note, we're heading back to Zamunda.
All right, Ashley, I need to interject here. This is part of my issue with this movie. Where's Maury? Where's the paternity test?
Exactly.
Mary was a self-professed hoe, okay?
Exactly.
So how do we know that this is actually your daddy? We don't know. And you're about to give him the keys to the kingdom just because he has a penis? Okay.
That is absolutely what I have next in my notes. I said two things first: no DNA test. And second, you telling me this man hopped on a flight all the way to America before he talked to Lisa? Because we discovered when he brings his ass back to Zamunda, he ain't tell Lisa shit.
Poor decision making.
So you ain't talked to your whole wife about this before you found out you had a son, decided to go to America to track him down and bring him back?
Or your presumed heir.
Nobody in the family, but most of all, he should have absolutely had a conversation with his wife, right? Yes. But I agree with you. You know, your daddy and Baba tell you got this son, and you telling me there's no confirmation of that whatsoever through some type of testing, and you're royalty. You're a king now. Okay.
Akeem was never this goofy, was he?
He was goofy. He was definitely always goofy, but to the extent where he would possibly give over his entire kingdom and lineage, I don't know if he was ever that damn goofy. But I digress. It is what it is. We're taking the movie as it is. Lisa, though, as I mentioned, is pissed. And so is Mika, his daughter, and the person who's been training her whole life to be queen. They're not here for it. Side note, when that man came up out of Leslie Jones' bathwater, Delora, I have in my notes, Jesus. Jesus.
I just called it new morning routine.
Girl, the royal privates have been cleaned, sir. Now, I have to tell you, though, this gives me pause. Now, you talk about the whole potential date rape with Akeem. As of this film now, the whole royal bathers thing, I'm like, is this forced sex labor? Is this being a forced sex worker?
Do they sign the dotted lines understanding what's expected of them?
Yeah. Again, looking at it from a 2021 lens, I was like, yo, is this okay? Like, is this okay that we're using or doing this to servants and people who work for us, that they have to bathe us and are apparently available to do what we so choose when we're naked in a bathtub with them?
You know, that narrative made me think of slavery, and I got automatically really uncomfortable.
Yeah. Guys, this is a comedy. Let's not go down that.
I know, but that's what it made me think of. I'm like, probably not. Ooh, okay.
Ooh. Let's move on, Lord. Oh, okay. So he was a fine man, though. That was my point of that. He was a beautiful black man.
He was solid.
Don't worry.
Solid.
I'm not gonna make you do anything you don't want to do if you show up at my house. I'll tell you that. I'll get your full consent. Okay. Anyway, General Izzy in an upcoming scene as we move forward offers his daughter this time because he finds out that Akeem is back. King Akeem. I keep calling him Prince. King Akeem is back. He had this whole son he done found. This time he's offering his daughter Popoto, aka Tiana Taylor, out here to Akeem's son. What are your thoughts on this whole performance that her and her dancers put on for this man? First of all, this is Tiana Taylor. I was not ready.
I mean, she's always known to give unbelievable performances.
Girl, right? That iconic moment of Kanye West video still lives in my head. Still has space in my head.
She's done plenty of runways that just leave your mouth on the floor. And her abs, Lord. Okay.
Body yaddy yaddy.
I loved it because one of my favorite moments from the first film was the introduction of her auntie, essentially.
Imani.
I mean, I loved it so much. Me and my mom, we had to figure out who did that. And of course, it was the Paula Abdul who choreographed it. I'm happy to announce that in this movie, the great Fatima Robinson.
Girl, you stole my last line that I was going to say at the end of this whole film. I was so excited. No, it's okay. We can talk about it now. I was so excited to see that Fatima is still out here doing her thing. Guys, if you were unaware, Fatima has been doing the thing for the longest. She was working with Aaliyah when Aaliyah passed away. She could have been on that plane. So I have a special place in my heart for Fatima. Yeah,
multiple of her videos, legendary. She's done Will Smith, Wild Wild West, like amazing.
Fatima's been doing her thing. But again, it's like because she almost, I feel like died, like she just has, not that that's what it takes to have a special place in my heart. Let's be clear, but she does.
No, I hear you. I loved it. And I was like, so they're doing Prince. Okay. I loved it.
It was gorgeous. Again, I was not ready. Tiana Taylor out here doing her whole thing. I appreciate that you have not given up just yet.
Just in case y'all don't forget.
Yes.
I have talent. Thank you.
So much talent. Because for a minute she was saying she was going to retire. And I'm like, girl, don't retire out here. You have so much talent.
I mean, I don't blame her working under Kanye in his current iteration.
Yeah, that's a whole other discussion for another day. As a part of this scene, agrees to the marriage, but first, Lavelle must pass a princely test. This princely test is going to be culture, critical thinking, and courage. They give him a week. General Izzy gives him a week to get himself together in order to marry his daughter. Because again, his threat is, listen, y'all get this together or I'm going to come assassinate the king. Walk your own path was the advice given by Marimbe, his royal barber, who we see him gradually kind of getting close to and confiding in because he's feeling discouraged, right? He ends up getting told Akeem's story from the first film, so we see some great flashbacks.
Also, another trope that sequels are good for, recapping the entire first movie.
In this case, I thought it was nice just because it's been so long. So for people who this may be their first introduction to coming to America, I thought it was valid and valuable. And also because, again, you have someone who does not know his father. So this is also someone who knows the history, who's relaying to you like, here, listen, this is why your father is special. Yeah, and this is your connection to him because he's like, I can't pass this test. You guys want me to cut the whiskers off of a sleeping lion? What the hell does that mean? I am from America. I am from Queens, New York. We don't do this. So essentially, he takes Marimbe's advice and follows in his father's footsteps, right, and chooses his own path. So he's like, Akeem was trying to get him to walk the way that a prince is supposed to walk, start dressing, started doing his hair different ways. So like, listen, I'm from Queens. So he embraces who he is. He brings his Uncle Reem, over to Zamunda for help. Inevitably, he is able to fulfill the challenge. Why? Because Mika... It's a great scene where Mika bonds with him and offers him some support and advice, right? We see her kind of accepting like, okay, I guess to see is what it is. And you need to use your mind. It's not just, what you're thinking it is. It's also about you having to think on your feet and figure out. So they end up using cat food to lure this whole lion.
Bait and switch. Yes.
Lure this whole lion and be able to cut off the whiskers. The part of the test occurs though where they had him whip out his penis and pretend to give him another circumcision was a little much for me.
That was also very hilarious to me because it was like when he when the shaman whacked down the knife and then picked up something and started eating it, that had me rolling on the floor. I was like, what?
Too much. And then even the foreskin where they were showing the foreskins of the previous, and Akeem's was the biggest roll you've ever seen. You like, hold up. And you see Leslie Jones look over at Lisa like, girl, that's you?
Wait. She's like, if you like it here, don't you? That was another part too. She was just like, hey.
Yes. She offered up her son's whole penis. Like, listen, let them take a little bit off the top, baby. Let them take a little bit more off the top. But obviously it was a joke. It was just a way again to test his courage. She was like, y'all want to test my courage by cutting off my dick? I just battled a whole lion.
Yeah. And your pride. That's what he said.
Your manhood comes down to your pride.
I kind of appreciated that, though. It is a lesson, even though, Eddie Murphy doesn't really go down that route,
It was definitely a lesson. Keep your dick in your pants. The next scene, it's always a walk in the garden, isn't it, Delora?
Always.
Marimbe and Lavelle are chatting. She tells him her dream to open her own barbershop. Yet again, we find out the sexism in Zamunda.
Call back to Bridgerton.
Yes. It's always a garden. Women are not allowed to own businesses in Zamunda. What the entire fuck?
That's kind of crazy considering his wife has been queen or a princess for the last 30 years. You don't think she would have had anything to say about that?
It's just upsetting, especially because, and as we end up getting to, Akeem had such a stark contrast initially between what he thought he was going to do once he took over from his father. And we see that not much progress has occurred in the time that we left the original film, at least in Zamunda. But Lavelle mentions his intention to change things. So it seems like he, again, is following his father's footsteps as being like young, having a hunger to help and, change the status quo. They kiss, Delora, which is a little scandalous, right? Because this is the future king now.
That, and he's betrothed.
And he is betrothed to Bopoto.
Mm-hmm.
So after this kiss, we see Marimbe kind of run away because she acknowledges, like, listen, we shouldn't be doing this. You have a whole future wife. I gotta keep it moving. And she's essentially, I don't want to call her a servant, but she's essentially of a lower stature than he is now, right?
Yeah.
So the same reason Akeem didn't choose Imani all those years ago is the same reason why Lavelle now ends up not choosing Bopoto.
I have in my notes, are the women from this land, do they just not have their own minds? Are they just Kardashians? Sorry.
Oh, the shade. All right, I'm done. I mean, at least the Nextdorian women seem to be the case, right? Because again, Imani is Bopoto's aunt, and she's doing the same thing her aunt was trained to do.
Exact same thing.
Bark like a dog. Whatever you want me to do, whatever you like, all that same verbiage. But he wants a woman that has her own mind and that he has a connection to. He wants Marimbe.
He can grow.
He wants Marimbe. And it's really sad because you think about the fact that it's not like these women could not be more. It's that this is all that they've been brought up to do. They've been brought up to be a wife, to be of service to whoever it is that they were going to marry, and that has not stopped in the 33 years since the first film, right? So after overhearing a convo between General Izzy and King Akeem, Lavelle and company decide to head back to Queens, and Lavelle and Marimbe are trying to get hitched. Akeem follows and finds them in time at the wedding chapel. But ultimately, he ends up approving of their nuptials because he realizes, like, we're the same. You're doing the same thing that I did. But
I'm king now, and I can change some stuff.
Exactly.
Around.
I do not have to. So one thing that I find so interesting, I've heard this even in real life, is that men feel that once their father passes away, that's when they really become a man. Because you no longer have
Will Smith.
Other man.
He jumped out of a freaking plane.
You no longer have that other man to fall back on as being their son. You are now fully in your element as a man. So I think this is a pivotal moment for him, especially in building this relationship essentially with his son. But I will say also, Delora, what is the rush at this point for Lavelle and Marimbe to get married?
There isn't one. I feel like if anything, it was to prevent the marriage for him and Bobutu.
Bopoto. Because I'm like, yo, it's been like a week.
Exactly. And y'all are that connected that you want to spend the rest of your lives with each other.
Exactly. But that's old school
fairy tale, because someone said that best too. It's like, that's the thing that we loved about coming to America. I actually had this conversation with my mom. It's part of the African American canon, right? Because it was the first film that had a all Black cast, that had a budget, where we looked rich, where we were royalty, where we looked fabulous.
Yes.
And we hadn't had anything like that before. I mean, honestly,
it was Wakanda before Wakanda.
Right. And we had Roots, and then we had Zamunda, and then we have the Wakanda.
Why do all these end in A's? Is it because of Africa?
I don't know. But because of that, you know, the first movie is a fairy tale. It's a fairy tale.
I hadn't even thought of it like that until Eddie Murphy was saying that the first movie was a fairy tale. I never thought of it like that.
Yes. And then so I feel like they're playing into that with, you know, all of the great fairy tales. They've only known each other for a week, and then they fall in love and live happily ever after. I mean,
it's a rom-com in a comedy package, right?
Yes,
because we have all these comedy heavyweights. But I'm glad you put that out there, because that is the way that even Eddie Murphy now describes the first film, as it's a fairy tale. And so some of the ridiculousness as we see it is like, well, I mean, it is what it is, because it's about the romance of it all. Back at the palace, while this is going on in America, Mika, Oma, and Tanashi and Simi all have to defend the castle, because General Izzy comes back with his crew and is like, where is the king? Where's Lavelle? It's time for them to get married.
They have been, you know, stringing them along this whole time.
They have, but at the same time, I feel like this was such a pivotal point, because it finally showed that, like, Mika and her sisters are fully capable of doing everything that they need to do to protect the kingdom, right?
It's like, you've raised me to be an independent woman. Let me show you what I can do.
And even this was the point where it struck a tone of diplomacy, because remember, before it was always about, well, if this doesn't go as we want it to be, it's war. And she was like, listen, are you ready to have diplomatic conversations now? So she pushed their relationship forward in a way that her father had not been able to. So it was really a pivotal scene. The To Be Loved Lisa serenade, when a king gets back, made me smile.
Yeah, it was very sweet. I loved it.
That was a way for him to get back into his wife's good graces, because, again, she didn't put him out the bedroom.
She told him about himself.
She was over it. Lisa, at the beginning of the movie, I was like, why isn't Lisa talking? Why doesn't she have too many speaking scenes? But she came fully into her element by mid-film, and I appreciated it, because I'm like, Lisa was always very outspoken.
Always.
She was always very strong-minded.
That's what he wanted.
Exactly. And that's what we loved about Lisa from the first film. You know? So the big finale, Dolores, I have in my notes, is Lavelle and Marimbe's wedding in Zamunda, because they end up not getting married in that chapel by Reverend Brown after all.
I want to say I love that scene, because Reverend Brown was hilarious. He was
in his black socks.
In his black socks with no pants, Ashley. And then King Akeem couldn't even say it. He was like, are we in this glorious house of the...
What is this?
The house of God?
Yeah, what is this? This looks like a chapel in Vegas. What is great about it too is...
house of God.
What is wonderful about this scene too is that in subsequent interviews with Arsenio Hall, he is from a family of ministers. So he really did take inspiration from his family members and put together this character. I love that so much, because I'm like, listen, preachers are entertainers to a certain extent, right? They all have their shtick. And that's not to say that they're not credible, but they all have their shtick for sure.
I mean, you have to be charismatic to be able to hold the attention of so many people. And
you absolutely do.
Side note, PBS has this whole series called The Black Church, and it's broken up into episodes. Phenomenal, well done. And they kind of talk about that, how, you know, our preachers have always been, you know, able to captivate an audience. and the call and response, that's part of our culture. So
yeah.
yes.
Coming from a family where my father is a minister, I
Yes.
will say it definitely is performative. I used to really enjoy my father's Sunday sermons, but it is absolutely a performative art form.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously most of them are not to the extent of Reverend Brown, but hilarious. Again, big finale is this wedding, complete with the performance by none other than Randy Watson and
Sexual
chocolate. I love this scene because Marimbe's like, who is it? Is it Diana Ross? Who could be better than Diana Ross? And all the Queen's people are like, no, like they are so enthralled. They're so excited that it is freaking Randy Watson and Sexual Chocolate.
I loved it. He was just his face is always so funny to me. Eddie is just so good at this.
Randy Watson is one of my favorite characters from the first film, absolutely. So I'm glad that he was in there because I was for a minute like, are we not going to have an appearance? This is the end of the film. So I was a little worried. Mika is also told by King Akeem that she will rule as queen. After Akeem is gone, the laws will be changed and Lavelle will serve as ambassador to America. What a
amazing.
Sweet moment for her. What a sweet moment to wrap up the film and to utilize the whole narrative of, obviously coming into the 21st century, realizing that women are more than capable of ruling and of being in positions of power. And also, it's Women's History Month. So you're right that we need to see some women in some positions of power, okay?
Exactly.
What was your favorite cameo or moment from the film, you think?
Oh, there were so many. I would say Morgan Freeman because I'm like, wait, is that Morgan Freeman? And then I didn't expect to see Rick Ross when I saw him. And then the last one would be the basketball player, the one he has the guy.
Mutombo. Yeah, Dikembe Mutombo. Yeah.
Yes. I didn't expect to see that one. What about you?
My favorite cameo or moment from the film, I feel like my favorite moments were fashion moments because again, I was just so intrigued by all the various outfits. That Bulgari snake necklace gave me my whole life. I was like, oh my God. Like, Lisa, those are gifts you giving out, boo?
I mean, she's a queen, so
my God,
it's nothing.
My God,
I did appreciate their friendship, though. I did enjoy that.
It was super cute, especially because given the sense of like a Meghan Markle feel, right? Where like I left everything I knew, I went to a whole nother country. I don't have anybody I relate to in the way that I did. So this is somebody that came from her same hometown. Exactly. We're speaking the same language. You're reminding me of who I am. It was very fun.
Grew up at the same time, singing the same songs. Yes.
Bougie bitch say what? It was very fun. I agree with you. I love their relationship.
Took Sia Maria to get her out of her shell to call him out on his BS when she did,
Yeah. I mean, I think the relationship with Leslie Jones, aka Mary Johnson, was definitely helpful for her to possibly come back into her own. Because as I said, at the beginning of the film, it was like, Lisa, where are you? Like, it seemed like you're a shell of who you once were. You're now very regal and beautiful. And shout out to Sherry Headley, by the way, because she's aging like fine fucking wine out here in these streets. Absolutely. But she did not seem like her full self. So I agree with you. It seemed like once the Queen's folks came in, that you started seeing more of the old Lisa again that we so loved from the first film.
Trevor Noah. I did not expect to see him with that awful mustache. Oh, so hilarious.
I also want to know, like, sir, is this your full accent or is this a fake accent? Like, is this how you sound when you go home? Do you put it on for us in America and you kind of like lighten your accent?
Excellent.
His accent was so thick in the film compared to how he talks on his show. But yes, I loved his cameo. Thank you for that, because he was definitely a funny one. I think I enjoyed all of the nuggets. I also love the twins who came back in the film from the first one. My name is Peaches, and I'm the best. All the DJs want to feel my breast or chest, whichever. Yes, I loved all of those moments that harken back to the original because it's nostalgia. Yes. It made me feel good. It made me remember why I loved the first film so much.
I actually have that in my notes. So many callbacks. So many.
Yes. It was a good time. I mean, like I said, I gave it a C because the first time I looked at it very critically, but the second time I was just here for it. I was just enjoying myself for what it was. And then John Legend. These drops that John Legend had, both of singing the Queen to Be and the Coming to America song. Those possibly were my favorite things about the film, like no shade, but I lived for it. And then as we already talked about the Fatima choreographing element I had in my notes as well. Did you have anything else that you enjoyed or loved about this film before we wrap up our recap?
It was a joy. And again, you may know this because we watch the same show on a regular basis, but Eddie Murphy was originally supposed to be the shaman, but he found out how long it would take to be
in makeup,
and he was like, "Oh no, that's you, Arsenio." That kind of cracked me up a little bit.
Exactly, like you go ahead and take that. I also thought it was funny that he originally wanted Tracy Morgan to be his son, and then Arsenio was like, "Bro, y'all are like the same age. Like he cannot be your son."
Not at all.
I also read today that Ryan Coogler originally came to him with an idea about Michael B. Jordan playing his son.
Ooh, that would have been good.
That my brother had mentioned to me he wished had been the case because he didn't feel that the son was as strong in terms of the story.
You mean the actor?
The actor who played his son.
I can see that because I can't say I really connected with him very well. You know, I think he kind of grew on me a little bit, but honestly, I enjoyed Leslie Jones more, or, you know, Akeem more, you know, other people more.
And I mean, I don't mind that actor getting that moment and getting his shine on.
Because actually, I'm glad to see him getting his star raised. You know what I mean?
For sure. And to Eddie's point, because his point was then it would just be all about the son. I think Michael B. Jordan at this point is too big of a star to put in that role and not be the focal point of the movie, right? Because then
is he funny?
And then all we're going to care about is Michael B. Jordan. And who are you going to cast opposite Michael B. Jordan, right? Like, it's not, because it takes you out of the element of Coming to America if you put somebody of that caliber possibly in that role. So I kind of agree with Eddie on that.
And can we also talk about James Earl Jones is 90 years old.
Legend.
He showed up for this movie. I'm like, yes, sir. I loved, you know, he had to be in the bed, but you got to do what you got to do when you're 90. Listen,
his voice is still intact, and that's the main focal point of James Earl Jones.
Exactly.
What did I just say? James Earl Jones. Guys, forgive me, it's the whiskey. James Earl Jones. So overall, Delora, I'm glad that you really enjoyed it, that you got so much humor out of it. I hope that all of our listeners, whether you felt like it lived up to the original or not, that you took some humor out of this, that you took it for what it was and enjoyed it a little bit on the day you watched it.
And I'm going to say, I think I was able to get the humor because I didn't have any expectations for it. I think that's what that was.
Keeping expectations low helps, don't you think?
It does. It does. I'd say so.
All right, Laura. Well, that is it for our recap of Coming to America, the sequel.
All right, Ashley, it's time for Hidden Gems.
Yep.
I'll go first. Okay, so Netflix original reality show. It's called Buried by the Bernards. It is an American reality comedy series created by Netflix. The series centers the Bernard family, who operates Our Bernard Funeral Services in Memphis, Tennessee. And it's 8 episodes, and it premiered this year, February 12th. I thought the show was hilarious. I thought it was interesting considering they are, you know, funeral home owners, right? And we've dealt with such an intense year when it came to death in our society. But it just was, it was good to see their perspective. Obviously, this was before the pandemic, and the family is funny. The uncle reminds me of somebody I know, my own uncle, honestly, on my mama's side, you know. It was a good show. And I mean, this is hilarious. They're known for really, really low prices. And
Hmm.
actually, they're known for having a drive-through viewing.
Oh,
That is
okay.
what made them popular, and their ridiculous commercials, which they actually film one in one of the episodes. So I recommend. It's light. It's a light watch. Like I mentioned, it's 8 episodes, and Ryan's daughters, Reagan and Deja, are so sweet and cute.
Well, that's
Uh,
good to know because I had seen the promo and I was like, I feel like it's such a hustle in
mhm.
funeral home service. So I struggle with that industry, to be
I
honest.
think they kind of expose that a little bit. Not, I shouldn't say expose it, but you feel like somebody was like, "Oh, this is an opportunity. Let's do it." Now, I will say they are professional and they do take their jobs very seriously, but you kind of get the business side of things for sure.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you mentioned it. I'll have to check it out.
All right. And my second hidden gem, which isn't really a hidden gem if you are a lover of podcasts, The Read, the podcast. They are the OG. They've been around since 2013. It's hosted by Kid Fury and Kit and Crystal. And the formal explanation of their show is a weekly hip hop pop culture podcast, and throwing shade, spilling tea with a flippant and humorous attitude. No star is safe from Fury and Crystal unless your name is Beyonce or Blue Ivy. So that's their official summary of their podcast. I've been listening to them since I've been listening to podcasts, I think since 2014, 2015.
This
I
is the
have
very first
regularly,
podcast I've ever heard.
I think I introduced them to you, didn't I? Or I was one of
No,
the
it was
first.
my girl Tamitra. Shout out, by
Was
the way,
it?
it's Tamitra's birthday. Happy birthday, boo. Yeah,
Happy
she was the
birthday.
first person that ever introduced me to it. It's the first podcast I had ever heard.
Yes, I fell in love with them instantly, and I have continued my love affair with them ever since. They're very nonchalant. They seem like they don't care, but they are obviously intelligent and hilarious.
Yeah.
And they speak on Black culture and Black things. So if you are a part of our lighter expression, aka white people, I will say proceed with caution, but if you're not afraid to hear what they have to say, I highly recommend.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Laura.
Thank
So my hidden gems this week, as usual, we have labeled this hidden gems, but obviously, guys, we give you some things that are on the popular spectrum.
Yes.
And today is no exception for me because my first hidden gem is Nomadland, girl, which obviously won the Gold Globe. I'm about to already call it Oscar winner, even though
Yeah.
it's very highly
Is it
favored.
really that good, Ashley?
So the reason why I am giving it one of my hidden gems is because I enjoyed this film so much that I was sad when it was over.
Really?
I was. And I think the reason for it, from my perspective, is especially because of the past year and me not really being able to travel visually, it was so enthralling to go on this whole journey with the main character and to be able to travel and to be able to be out in nature, and the visuals of it were so beautiful. And also for me, it was about really going on a journey with someone and walking a mile in someone's shoes that I don't think I'll ever experience, because this is really about a woman who has lost her husband and her whole life and livelihood based on the recession. So she ends up becoming a nomad and traveling around in a van. So that is an experience in existence that I don't think I'll ever experience in my lifetime. So I think it was really just that, what is it like to walk in a mile in someone else's shoes? I think that I understand why Chloe Zhao won her award, because to think about all the locations they had to shoot at, to think about how they had to block, to think about how they had to adjust for weather and all these things, and also still lay out a full, compelling story.
It was
I
probably
just really
cumbersome
enjoyed
of a
it.
task
Exactly. And
compared to
I
One
really
Night in
enjoyed
Miami,
it.
where it was in
It was stagnant. Exactly.
one
And
room.
Regina King, obviously, we think that film is
Phenomenal.
phenomenal.
Absolutely.
But I will say that Nomadland, I could see inherently what the challenges could have been. And I watched it on Hulu. It is available on Hulu.
Yes.
And I just found it, like I said, it was such an escape for me, because I love to travel and it's something I have not been able to do.
So Ashley, I will say this. I assume that Nomadland was getting all its accolades because it was like the only studio film, and I thought it was like a political thing that these awards were awarding, you know, this studio film over, you know, the Amazons or the Netflix and things like that. So hearing this makes me a little bit more warm or more willing to watch it.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously, as we've seen in the entertainment business, I'm sure there was definitely politics involved in it as well, right? But I can just give you my perspective as to why I enjoyed it and why I chose to give it a hidden gem. Like, I really was sad. Like, I kept kind of rewinding it a little bit so that it wasn't over yet, because it just felt like I could breathe. It felt like I was on the road and I was out living this life a little bit. Not that I ever want to live in a van, because I don't think it's for me, but to see that this is a lifestyle that some people had to live, and to see this woman's journey, I thoroughly enjoyed. So that's Nomadland on Hulu. My second is Queen Sugar. Also watching this show on Hulu. So let me explain, guys. I know this is not a new show whatsoever. It started in 2016. It's an own show created and produced by Ava DuVernay. But I didn't have cable when this show first started, right? And it's the own network show. So I would hear coworkers talking about it, but I never got into it. And now it's on Hulu. So I am watching season 1, and I'm like, oh my God, this is excellent. Like, I'm so enjoying this story of this family.
1, huh?
I'm on episode like 6 of season 1.
And
so
to be fair,
I'm just starting the journey.
And I stopped it, but yes, I'm glad. Welcome to the club. Welcome.
Thank you. And I just, it's Black excellence. I think performance-wise, it's amazing. Storyline, it's amazing. It's a family show, really about this, the father as well as the children and their family drama. And it's just so rich. You also have so many elements to it. I'm enjoying it thoroughly. So Queen Sugar is definitely another recommendation for me. My last one, and guys, we're going to hopefully microdose this, Soul of a Nation. If you are not watching this on ABC, episode 2 just dropped. This airs on Tuesday nights at 10 p.m. on ABC. This first season, I believe, is going to be 6 episodes. We had the first episode, Common, kicking things off with, some spoken words. Sterling K. Brown was the host. This past week, it was Marseille Martin. There are some really good segments in there. Sunny Halston hosts a segment that I love. I have learned so much just from these first 2 episodes. I wasn't aware of the whole reparations discussion going on in Evanston, Illinois. And they really do a good job too, for me, of bridging the serious with the lighter, because sometimes shows like this can be very heavy. And so I like that they also incorporate music, and we get performances from John Legend and from her. And I think they do a really good job of how they produce the show and put the show together to offer a little levity.
All heavy stuff.
No, there's some levity in there, and there's some humor in there. And I think you come away with, because what I was also thinking about this past Tuesday was, if I were completely unfamiliar, or if I'm not of the Black community, would this make sense to me, and would I get something from it? And I think and I hope that those who are not in the Black community come away with so much from this show. And that's what I appreciate more than anything. So like I said, guys, highly recommend Soul of a Nation, airing on ABC Tuesday nights at 10 p.m. And Delora and I will hopefully be microdosing that on our next episode.
Yes.
Those are my hidden gems, darling.
Thank you, Ashley.
Of course.
Oh my goodness. So we did it. 21.
Can you believe it? We grown out here. We drinking age.
We are. I'm so happy to be doing this with you, Ashley. So
me too.
As just quick note, we are not going to drop an episode next week, but we will return Friday, March 26th.
Yes.
With WandaVision.
I am beyond excited. Y'all don't understand. Marvel to the death. I am too excited to talk about this show.
So excited, and it is worth the hype, y'all.
Absolutely. And guys, if you miss us in the in-between, because everybody needs a break. We need a little break. Feel free to go back and re-listen to some of our episodes, because again, we have 21 at this point for you to listen to.
Ashley, have you had any favorite ones so far? Or are they all individual children that you love?
They are all my children, and I love them all.
Yes.
Love them all. And again, we love you guys for sticking with us and listening to us every single week.
Thank you.
And Delora, I love you from the bottom of my soul.
I love you too, Ashley. Wouldn't do this with anyone else.
Oh. Well, on that note, guys, we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Be blessed. Have the best month possible.
Absolutely. Be safe. Bye.
Bye.